So I just want to jump out there and say that I'm about to say some things that were negative about how this match ran. I want to throw it out there. I think the double tap is a fine match. I kind of got hosed on how my squad was put together and how I had to run the clock as a paying competitor, but that's not to discourage anybody from coming to the match. It is a very fun match. It's a hose fest. The stages are pretty simple, so if you are a newer shooter, I think that this is a great major, especially if you're in the North Texas, Oklahoma area. Please do not hear the things that could be construed as negative that I'm about to say in this video to discourage you from shooting this match. I think it's a good match.
All right, so looking at the results, want to figure out what I need to be doing leading up to Area 4 and then Nationals. So going to try and get trained up and do a little bit better. This was an easy match insofar as there wasn't much technical shooting. It basically came down to your ability to move around in tight positions because the bays were kind of small, and your ability to confidently shoot targets and not take makeup shots on steel. Now, it was a pretty hot day. The first, I'd say, 3 or 4 stages is actually quite pleasant. And then the wind stopped blowing and heated up to about 100. And then the squad started slowing down. I was in a squad with a bunch of older shooters who didn't do so hot in the heat, and I ended up holding the clock for about half the day, which wasn't great and probably didn't help my performance, but it's just kind of something that you would have to work through. Now, keep in mind, I shot this on staff day. This is not par for the course for this match. It is a well-run match, but it was staff day, and the squad I was with was mostly C and below shooters, C and unclassified shooters, so they weren't very experienced in keeping the squad moving, and as a result, I ended up trying to help facilitate the squads moving through the match, and it was just unfortunate, but it kind of is what it is. So I ended up finishing about 10th, and you can see there that there were about 4 people in front of me who were in the 76s, so would have been it's pretty tight field, and it starts to separate a little bit when you get up to about 4. 2 and 1. Dozzy at 94% of max is fantastic. So if you look at the actual raw times and all that good stuff, max had about, let's see here. So max points were okay. I shot 89% of points, so it's almost 90%, which is kind of my lower threshold goal. But otherwise pretty good points, but really the time is what's different. If you look, max completed the match in 124, and I completed it in 156. So I got to find a good chunk of time that is going to be about 32 seconds over 11 stages. It's about 3 seconds per stage. There is one stage I know of that is a bigger offender, so that's really going to be what I'm trying to look for is time more than anything else. So let's take a look. All right, so my first stage, I started on the squad that I thought I was going to be on, which was starting on stage 7. And what ended up happening was they made the squad smaller, and I didn't find out until they read the names of the squads, and especially in squad 9. So I came up right as it was supposed to be my turn to shoot. They worked me down about 3 in the order so I could get ready to shoot, but even still, wasn't a strong first stage. But let's take a look at it. What really ended up happening is, so the draw takes forever because I ended up stepping out of the fault line. So I was about 2.5 seconds slower, and the gun is up and on target where it's supposed to be, but then I am out of the fault line. Let's see there. So we'll call that 225. So yeah, there's about a 1/2 second delay right there. So I still would have been about 2 seconds slower, and I'm shooting pretty conservatively. And I make a strategy error coming into this position. You can't really tell, but there's a popper about right there. So I came in on this popper, which was dumb. I should have come in on the paper, worked this way and finished on the popper, because coming off the reload, you want to let the recoil kind of set the gun in your hand and be ready to shoot. So if I drop a Charlie on this, it's not as bad as a makeup on steel. So that makeup shot on steel cost me, 1/2 second to 3/4 of a second as well. So there's about a second of time. So that could have cut my time by about 1.5 seconds on that. So All right, there's the first stage. Okay, on this stage, this actually went pretty well. It was 10 Alpha, 2 Charlie on the first stage. So let's see how it is. I actually did the shots. So it's a 1-5 draw, which isn't the greatest, but the split was sporty at a 23. The transition onto steel is a 5-4. That's not great. And for the record, I'm only about 3/4 of a second behind there. So this transition onto steel at 0.54, I mean, there's probably almost 2/10 on that is what it probably should have been if I were to be competitive. So transitioning onto small steel confidently. And then my splits and transitions, that's a 22 for a transition, which is good. 18 split, nice. 26 transition, not bad. Could be a little better. 19 split. This 79 transition is where I lost most of the time. Like that should have been a 0.5 or less. And then transition onto paper was a 3/8, which is still a little slow. I gotta figure out something, because if you look at how I'm set up here in the if you look at how my weight is distributed, like, so if my center of my upper body weight is about there, it's all on my left leg right there. It just seems like it's a little off balance. I'll see if I can somehow get lower or still see around the barrels. My hard leans, already looking at the video, I can tell my hard leans for this stage were, not just stage, but the whole match were a bit of a problem. So that's something I want to keep an eye on. Okay, on this stage, this also went well, 10 Alpha, 2 Charlies. For the most part, it's about a half second slower than my going the other way, which tells me that I probably was going too slow on the first place. So my draw and load is a 2-2-4. So if everything else was equal on the stage, then the difference in my stage time should be about 3/4 of a second, 0.74 seconds. Since it was only 0.5 seconds, it tells me that everything else was going well. Let's see there. So the draw to the paper was good with an 18 split, 57 transition, which is a little slow still. Similar 66, a 20 split, 27 transition, a little slow, 19 split, 25 transition, 18 split. Getting onto the steel in the last position is a 0.8. That's where I'm losing all my time. But the transition's only a 0.33 of the 17 split. So I guess I was splitting a little bit faster and probably transitioning a little bit better is probably where I made the time up. But again, body positioning to the right's a little bit better. Leaning to the left is harder than leaning to the right, so maybe that's part of what it is. I don't think I dwelled on sights near as long. Okay, first real field course, I would say, for the day. And there was debate as to whether to go left first or right first. And in the initial walkthroughs, I wanted to go right first, but I ended up biting on the left first because I was worried about the reload. And I think that I would have been probably better off doing it to the right. And you'll see why, because the reload I made a mess of anyway. Because the reload was a little bit harder. It was a little more straightforward doing it the advancing into the window way than it was trying to do basically a 180 and hit a position, not a 180, excuse me, a 90-degree turn and hit a position. So probably, if I could have this stage back, I probably would have run it right to left. But the one thing I'm noticing is in the first stage, I stepped over the fault line and had to adjust my footing to get back in there. And I do the same thing in the first position here, so check it out. All right, so watch this foot. Okay, foot faulting when I should be shooting. So it takes about 3/4 of a second before I stand back up on the fault line like I'm supposed to. So the remedy for that is I'm going to go to Home Depot and get some fault lines cut and spike them in the ground and use them in my practice and just hit the fault line with my cleats on. That's going to be some stuff I do in live fire, working on positional, because I think a lot of my issues here is positionals. As far as how I'm standing in this, I felt like I was a lot lower, but looking at it, it looks like I'm pretty erect. And as a result, it takes a little bit of time for me to leave. Like, let's just see how I load up my weight to leave the position. So let's look at where my shoulders are. It's not quite that bad. If you look at that, it's only about, I don't know, 4 inches or so. And leaning to the left is hard. It's probably why I should have finished in the left there. Shooting to your support side is harder because you can't see out as far with the hard lean. So finishing on the hard lean was probably a better idea. Let's see what the splits were on that partial. A 4-4, that's okay. 24 on that last open, so good throttle control. Trying to start to get out of position here on transitioning onto the steel, but then there's a makeup. So there's the first half second. So far the clock is running. We've got about 1.25 seconds on the stage. You can't do makeups. And then watch this reload. This is not a great reload, but I do make it out of position. But I've taken all of my ability to have a good reload. There's not enough space. But I don't even start reaching for my magazine until I've basically turned 90 degrees. So I was late getting my hand down to the mag pouch. And right about now, I feel like the reload should be complete. That would be a 1.58, which is pretty sporty for a field course. I was probably a little bit aggressive. I'm saying it's a second of wasted time. Like realistically, it probably should be 3/4 seconds. So there's an easy 2, and it's right about 2 seconds, in my opinion, of time that I wasted just through bobbles. But we're not done yet. There it is, another half second. So 2.5 seconds of my own worst enemy from missing steel. So bad reload cost me about 3/4 second, and misses on steel ended up costing me another full second. So got to go 1 for 1 on steel, guys. Got to. In fairness, I remember at this point in the match thinking like, hey, I'm not locking out my strong hand risk like I figured out in practice this week. So on all the other stages, I was able to lock out my wrist from about this point forward, and the amount of missed steel basically falls off the map. I think there's maybe one more makeup shot on steel all day. And just to illustrate that point, so let's say I can't get all of that 2.5 seconds. Let's say I can just get the 2 seconds that we talked about. If I edit my score on stage 1 here to 18 seconds. Say I was able to go 1 for 1 on steel twice, and I hit the position the first time. And there's a little bit of time on the reload that from a better reload. So my old score was a 80%. Then I would have jumped up 89%. And the overall, it would have put me up to basically a full point higher right there by doing that. So that missing steel is not something you can do if you want to compete at the high level. You can see that Max was only a 1787, and Dazzy actually beat him by nearly 2 seconds, which is pretty remarkable. All right, so stage 2, I am missing video on. I had a cameraman malfunction. So I'm at 1388 on time versus Max's 1158, and he shot all alpha on this stage. So really his points was what ultimately set him up on this. I'm willing to bet that my reload is probably what cost me some time on this one, because I mean, my reload's not great. So I think that reload's starting to become a theme for the match, but let's look at the stage diagram itself and I can kind of talk through it. So what had happened was I basically came into the box with, took a step into the right and shot those guys because they disappear. And then shot those guys, hit the reload, came up here and shot these guys. Steel, steel, paper, paper, come across the front, shooting into position on these guys, swing on steel, steel, paper, paper. I can't remember if I had a makeup shot. I think I may have had one makeup. I don't remember. So wish my video was complete there, but that's kind of how we did it. There really wasn't much of a way to do it. Right-handed shooters, or excuse me, left-handed shooters would come up this way, and left-handed shooters would come up, or left-handed shooters would go right, right-handed shooters would go left. It didn't really matter. I think there was a no-shoot that ended up being on this target, so some people decided to do the reload coming through the gap and coming to this position since you couldn't get as aggressive coming in that way, and that was probably a better way to do it. So
it was a pretty simple stage. All right, so stage 3 is the problem child. This was my low point for the match, where I was able to shoot basically 61%. So I hurt real bad, and it wasn't just on time, which they blew me away on, but it was also on points. If you look at my Charlie count, I have basically twice as many Charlies, and because of a sloppy position entry trying to get out of there fast, I had a mic no shoot. So even if you don't even fix the time, this is pretty significant. Even if you just make this a Alpha Charlie and take the mic and no shoot away, which you're not supposed to do, but this is just illustrating the point of how bad penalties hurt. It jumps up to a 74% on the match, and including my previous edits, that would put me at 77%, starting to look like a pretty strong match at that point. If, you know, all other things being equal. But we're looking for time. We're not looking for just, oh, if you take all my penalties away, then it would have been a pretty good match. But that's just illustrating just how hurtful. I mean, I gained 15% on the stage by just changing that one shot into a Charlie rather than a mic no shoot. Okay, here we go. That position entry just looks slow to me. It's shooting to my left. The right ones don't look quite as bad, and you'll see one here in a second. That was a pretty sporty position entry. You see my no shoot right there? Let's watch it happen. Was it the first shot or the second shot? First shot was good. Second shot, I started transitioning the gun. You can see the gun move as I'm trying to get out of that position. So first shot was an alpha, and then I just start dragging the gun to the left and no shoot. And as I left the position, I knew it had happened. I was like, did I just see what I thought I saw? And like, yep. And so too late now. Pretty good leaving this position. And where I think I lost some time, because Dazzy shot basically the same plan as me. He didn't shoot the same plan. Let's jump back here. Rather than coming here first, he went to the left first and then came here. My reasoning for doing it the way I did it was I could get a burst of speed going across the back line, and it was easier to hit this position just stepping into the box this way. It made sense to me. Whether or not it affected the stage, I don't know. I think that probably I just got outshot. Dot's moving around real good for me as I have started locking my wrist out, and you can see the gun is staying pretty flat. Now, if you look at how I'm doing this and how I'm just kind of stutter stepping, I need to pick up the speed on this. This is a common type of target where your ability to basically shoot on a run is rewarded, but I mean, my points were pretty bad on this stage as it was. Stood up in that last position and didn't stay low. The transitions I'm not super happy with on this. Especially that last 90-degree transition, that was not my favorite. So transitions are something I want to talk about. I've already mentioned transitions a few times so far in the video, just specifically transitions on the little steel. I just need to get more precise and more confident. I think both my draw and my transitions are kind of linked, so I want to train both of those skills at the same time and see if I can't cut down the transition time. So that's going to be one of the things. So left position entries, standing on fault lines, specifically in the movement category. Generally staying lower. I mean, believe it or not, I am actually lower than I would have been even a year ago, but I need to work that a little bit harder as well. Okay, let's see how it goes on this stage. So that was a really bad reaction to the beep. So there's the beep. It's just so slow. I wish I would have reacted better. So there's probably a little bit of time there. I do stay in motion the whole time. 1 for 1 on steel. The reload right there, I think I wasted, I'm going to call that honestly 0.7 seconds because I don't think I got the timing exactly right. But if you look at the reload, just watch how I ended up doing it. So watch where my focus is. So this was a programming error in how I ran the stage. What should have happened is I should have programmed this as the shot breaks, start the reload. So I should have been moving my hand toward the magazine release and hand. So I'm sucking the gun in to start moving rather than to start a reload. And if you watch how my hips are moving, watch where my head is. my head snaps to the next target and I'm starting to move. I haven't even initiated my reload. And so at that point, the shot is called. So from about a 9-1, I don't even start to initiate the reload until right about now. So about 0.7 seconds of time that I end up moving without starting my reload. And as a result, I'm standing here dead time. So that's why I want to say it's about 0.7 seconds of dead time, all other things being equal on the reload. In watching Dazi's video on this stage, I know that basically his ability to stay low and shoot going across the front of the box there, his transitions are significantly faster and tighter, but the reload hurt for 0.7 seconds. But even with that 0.7 second pickup there, that's going to be 2 seconds off this speed, and my points were a little bit worse. So shooting on the move, at least not shooting on the move and being able to do it, but shooting on the move and being able to shoot alphas is something I need to spend some time on, because that last stage that we looked at and this stage, the shooting on the move, my points started to kind of drop off. So I need to spend some time shooting on the move and get a little bit lower, just because you can watch me compress and stand up and down. If you watch like Dazi, look at DZ Shooting, I think is his Instagram title. Look at Dazi's stages for this match. And he's a machine. He creates kind of this stable platform for his upper body and just his lower body moves, and he hardly changes elevation at all. It's really impressive to see. Okay, let's have a look at this. I made a strategy error, but I think pretty much everybody shot this the same way. I'm pretty pleased with how it went for the most part, except for my stage plan started to fall apart. It started to get hot around this time of day. The wind stopped blowing, and it was getting up closer to 100. Okay, so there's a little bit of hesitation leaving that as I watch steel fall down, which is a no-no. It's not that big a deal, but it cost me some time. Keep both hands on the gun. Gun is up. Sinking down low to start shooting on the move. Did well there. Okay, this is where things go badly. So I had programmed to immediately snap the gun over there and get pointed that direction, shooting in on this target, and then complete a reload as I came into position. Now my body thought that this is dumb. This is a wide transition and you should be reloading right now. So my hand is gonna drop to the mag pouch, come back up. I end up eating a delta on this target just to try and shoot fast. So I ended up dropping points. And what happens when I get there is there's that basically a standing reload for about a second. So there's about a second of time where I'm not scoring points due to my standing reload. But that was pretty, let's look at that shooting again. Way to go. Grip work's paying off, buddy. So the last position, I shot it well. Everything else went pretty well, but let's see how bad that hurt me with that one we'll call it 1.11 seconds, because that's what it showed in Shot Coach. Okay, so there we are. There's my 1 delta and my my points. My points aren't great on this one, but everybody shot more Charlies. But watch what happens when we do this. It scores. So let's drop a second off the time. So we're going to call that 14.38. No, that's not right. 14.38. Let's drop that delta, and let's just call it a Charlie, because, and let's see what happens. So now I'm a 778 hit factor. Oh, that's not what I want. So it jumps me up to an 81% right there. Shooting better points, so that's pretty good. And on the day, if I was more perfect, I'm at 78% right now. So that's pretty good, I guess. Okay, again, I had a cameraman malfunction on this stage. I'm going to show you, I'll show my work after this, but I just want to show you the power of IFSIC and what happened. So my time, I'm losing about 6 seconds from where I probably should be, but this is exaggerated. There is 1 makeup on steel. We'll count that as a half second. So if I went 1 for 1 on steel, that would be 1. It was on the second piece of steel I'll show you. And the other one is a standing reload. So let's call that 1.7 seconds. So that's 2.2 seconds, all other things being equal. Let's see what it does. We're at 71%. So that's going to drop us down to 18. Let's see, we said 2 seconds, it was 20.5.
So 2.25, so 18.25 seconds. That jumps me up to an 80% right there on the stage. And overall, if I had executed well within my abilities, I probably would have jumped up in the ranks from 10th where I started to about 5th. This is the last major hiccup. So let's go into how I screwed that stage up. Basically, you had two options. You could go to a corner first and then work back across the middle, or you could go to the middle first, go to the corner, go to the other corner. So that's what I did. I ended up choosing to, it was a unloaded start with the trigger guard on the mark on the table. Your palms had to be touching a mark on either side of the table, and you could do magazines on belt or magazines on table. Now, if you've done an unloaded start before, then you would know that it's all about how efficiently you can move your hands around and all that kind of stuff. And almost everyone on my squad, except for the open shooter who is an A class, everyone on my squad decided to reload off their belt because it didn't specify how you put the magazine on the table. I put the magazine almost touching my left hand, so all I had to do was pick it up and the magazine was in my hand with a good index. So that's what I did. And it was way faster than going back to the belt, coming back up, because in one motion I had the magazine and gun in my hand, and as I was lifting up, it was easier for me. And I don't know why anybody would go to your belt on that when you had the option of basically putting the magazine in your hand. So read the stage briefings and look for all the advantages you can. So the way I ended up shooting this is I actually went around the table to the right. I shot in on these two targets. There, two. That went well. I worked on the steel. Oh, it's worth saying, my first magazine has 23 rounds in it, which I can actually seat pretty reliably. But thinking about it, I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm going to drop it down to 22. And I did this after working out in my head during the walkthrough that I would have 2 makeup shots in the gun. And 2 makeup shots was a comfortable margin. Or excuse me, 1 makeup shot in the gun. And 1 makeup shot felt like a comfortable margin for the difficulty of these steels. And what ended up happening is I needed that. So let's count, shall we? So let's delete all that. So let's count. So that's 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Shoot out on these guys. 11, 13. Shoot in on this guy. 15, 16, 18, 20, 22. So I had 22 rounds in the gun. I think I may have had another makeup. Or maybe I didn't. I don't know what happened. But bottom line is, I put 1 shot on this guy and had to do a standing reload and shoot him 1 more time. And it was a sporty reload. I remember it being pretty sporty, but at the same time, it was a lot of wasted time. So that's about 1.7 seconds there of just wasted time. And wish I could have this one back. I think I definitely could have done it a bit faster. So I ended up giving up a lot of time on this stage to Max and Dazzy on this. Then, you know, I had a nice, in theory, I was going to be able to reload across this middle and then shoot everybody else. And the shooting went pretty well. You can watch the main match video and it's fine, but it's stupid little brain things. Don't alter your plan. Like, I never planned when I was breaking down the stage initially to download my magazine, because I remember thinking, like, I can get this seated and still have all 23 rounds and it's going to be fine. And it didn't go my way. So what should have happened is I probably should have been having a slide lock reload as I ran across this way. That's how it should have gone, all of the shooting being equal. So, oh well. Without even looking at the time on this is my last stage, and at this point, everyone was miserable. My joints were stiffening up. I was ready to go home. All of the other squads at this point had been shot out for about an hour and a half, because as the day progressed, we started losing people helping reset stages due to the fact that they were just older folks and it was hot. So, I mean, one person was staying in the shade and even went back to their car to sit in the AC.
because they couldn't hack it out in the hot sun. And as a result, like the resets were just taking longer and longer. But my biggest problem on this stage is I shot basically, like for all the other stages, I was shooting basically twice the Charlies that Max was shooting. And I shot 4 times the amount of Charlies that Max was shooting on the stage. Now, granted, there were swingers that I think I went 2 Charlie, Alpha Charlie on. So there was 4 Charlies right there. But I still dropped a bunch of Charlies for absolutely no reason. But let's just do the math here without even altering the time. I'm just going to wipe out a bunch of these 2 Charlie targets and give myself twice the Charlies Max had. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, there's 6 Charlies. That's what I would generally shoot against those. My hit factor jumps basically a whole point, and it jumps all the way up there. So I definitely could have shot 6 Charlies on this stage, although Dazzy also had a hard go of it. But assuming that I was able to put it down with 6 Charlies, then I could have finished the match at about 79%, which makes me a lot happier, because ultimately my goal in the division is I want to shoot 85% of max, because that would be considered a master classification against the guy who's probably going to win Carry Optics Nationals. So if I could have shot at 79%, I'd have been pretty happy. All right, so at this point, because the stage is dragging on so long, Robert Porter, the match director himself, decided to come be our RO and run everybody and score the stages. And it honestly did help having somebody jump in and help motivate us, because, I mean, you can only yell for Paster so many times before it gets old. But when the match director's the guy doing it, so big props to Robert and trying to get us out of there, because he saw that we were struggling. So that was good. So I made the choice to shoot these guys first, this target set, because that's kind of what defines this start position right here. And this is a Robert Porter classic. The 2 double taps I've shot, there's been the start position where basically it's palms cupping alternate elbows. So my right hand is on my left elbow, my left hand is on my right elbow. It's a non-traditional start position, but it's been in both the double taps I've shot so far. Same with the hands on knees. Those seem to be some Robert Porter trademarks. But Robert's a great guy, and really appreciate all the work he put into this match. So if you notice, there's the activator. That's the popper. I think probably the way to have done this, since the movers would have lost energy faster, would have been to draw to this popper, then swing onto the upper partial, and then try and leave on the lower partial, kind of shooting out of position. So that would have allowed these, let's just look. So we're at about let's assume it's going to be the same first shot, because it's shooting to a partial versus shooting to that popper. Those are both difficult shots, so I probably would use the same amount of sight of care on that. So we're at a call it 205. All right, and versus a 4-1. So there would have been an extra 1.5 seconds for these targets to lose energy, which would have slowed them down and made it easier to hunt alphas on. Just look how slow I am coming across. I am just gassed at this point. It was pretty miserable. Oh my gosh, coming into position, that's pretty, just like, oh, make it stop. So this was funny, because I didn't miss the position, but it was just such a tight position. I was compressed. You can't really see it from where the camera angle is, but the inner target, like, I just basically pointed the muzzle of the gun at the target and just like, whatever, good enough, and just let it go. And I think it ended up being 2 Charlie, or no, it was Alpha Charlie. But man, I didn't see, because I didn't see exactly where my dot went, but it was good enough. So I ended up shooting, I've never seen a swinger like this before. Let's see, let's back it up. So I ended up shooting him left to right.
And I don't know if that was the right call or not. I shot them pretty aggressively. I mean, all things being, like, it was basically one presentation, and I was able to shoot all 6 targets. So for short of transitioning a bit faster, I don't know how I could have done that a whole lot better, but I ended up dropping a bunch of points. So regardless, that's the match, guys. If you watch this whole thing, I appreciate it. Just let me know in the comments if you actually made it this far. But appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.